Hello and welcome to episode 4 of the Zankus Watch podcast. We are now going to be reacting to a Spaces conversation between Sarah, Cera, and our dear Gorl, Tara Reid, and as well as Lev Parnas and Krasenstein. A lot of people who apparently it was a complete hot mess. I absolutely love it. Our dear Gorl, Tara Reid, the girl who tried to use a fake rape accusation to bring down Joe Biden. She got dragged to filth, and we are here. We are here to listen to all of it. I'm so excited. And I know we are the Zankus Watch podcast, and we will react to Zankus eventually. Our first episode, we did react to a podcast with Zankus. I'm going to have to re-react to that because our first episode, the sound quality was so bad that I just cannot do that. If you listen to the episode, even with the most fantastic headphones, you can't hear what I'm saying. It's annoying. So I want to re-record that. Meanwhile, episode 4, we're going to be listening to Tara Reid, to her Spaces conversation. It's going to be awesome. Please settle down, listen in. Doesn't matter. If you're driving to work, if you're looking after the kiddos, if you're washing dishes, whatever you're doing, go ahead, sit back, relax. Let's listen to Tara Reid make a fool of herself. Alrighty.
Good afternoon. Hello, Indra. Hello. Is it Tara or Tara?
It's Tara.
Tara. Thank you.
I think that's so funny. She's like, it's Tara, because Tara sounds just way too American and vulgar, so it's Tara. She wants to be as elegant and European as possible. It's just so dumb. I mean, she is, if anything, somebody... she's a bit of a poser. Actually, not a bit of a poser. She's a charlatan, a useful idiot, and a poser. She always is trying to make herself seem more elegant and intellectual than she actually is.
Saying it wrong all week.
I think there's even a song, or I don't know, some radio place where the girl was like, it's Tara, not Tara. It's so funny. Tara, not Tara. So anyway, yeah, Tara's it's a Celtic name. It's not a Celtic name, not Irish name.
Oh, shut up. It's a really common girl's name in the U.S. Just, stop trying to imbue it with meaning that, you have a very common girl's name.
Well, I think it's funny when people hear Tara Reid, the first thing they think of is the 90s actress, right?
Yeah, that pisses me off, because now I can't listen to, American Pie. I can't, watch Sharknado. Whenever, people talk about Tara Reid, I twitch involuntarily, because they're talking about the actress, and damn it, that's been ruined for me, and it hasn't been ruined the way Susan Sarandon has ruined her movies for me, but it's still a bit ooh, I can't watch the Riff Tracks version of Sharknado anymore, because every time they talk about Tara Reid, and they do, I keep thinking about, the fat rape accuser who got, exposed as a fraud, instead of, the actress, who, has her own demons, but, is nevertheless a better person than our Gorl.
Oh, yeah, she's younger than me. I had it first.
Yeah, she's younger than you, she's prettier than you, she's much thinner than you. Actually, she's too thin. But she's more successful than you. She'll be remembered long after you will when you pass away, my dear. She is, she's just overall a better person than you. And that's something that you know.
But you know what? One of my favorite movies is The Big Lebowski. I love that movie.
Yeah, it's about someone who tried to commit a fraudulent abduction in order to get ransom money. Yeah, it's about people lying to each other and committing fraud in order to get ransom money. Of course you love it. You're a fraud yourself. You try to do the same thing yourself. It does not surprise me that you like The Big Lebowski.
And she was in that.
She was in that, yes.
Yeah, the toe. Yeah, The Big Lebowski is the best. The Jude abides.
So when I started, we're having a little bit of technical difficulties already.
Okay.
So I'm trying to get the co-host invites sent to Indra, but apparently there's some issues. But I'm going to have Indra, until we can get that sorted, Indra, I'll have you introduce yourself and sort of what your role will be today. Go ahead, Indra.
Thanks so much. Yeah, actually, Sarah, on that note, I see it, but I can't accept it. It's not allowing me to accept co-host at this point. So I'll just sit tight and we'll see what's happening. This does happen in Spaces, everybody. We have a few issues with co-hosts, but also in sometimes in speakers. And hey, Tara, nice to meet you.
It's nice to meet you too.
Hey, can I just ask you just if you wouldn't mind to just put yourself on mute if you're not speaking, because we can hear a little bit of sound from the background. That's all. Thanks so much.
Yeah, just put yourself on mute for the rest of the rest of your life, frankly. Just put yourself on mute. Just like we're all sick of you, we're all tired of you. Or rather those of us who have been like trying to fight disinformation on the internet, we are just so sick of you. You've done so much damage to our political system. Just put yourself on mute and stay on mute. I'll listen to that annoying beeping introduction song for the next 3 hours. By the way, this Spaces conversation is going to be going on for about 3 hours. It's 3 hours and 5 minutes. So this reaction will be split up into two parts, like episodes 2 and 3. Our reaction to the Megyn Kelly interview of Tara Reid was split up into two parts. What we're going to do is we're probably going to split this up into 3 parts because I'm going to be reacting. It's going to be a bit. I mean, a 5-hour long podcast. Like, I'm not up for a 5-hour long podcast episode. So just be advised. Right, plus I have stuff to do in a few hours. So, let's go on.
Okay. All right. So, hello, everyone. I'm Indra Bartona, a producer in the film and television industry, host and founder of the Positivity Vibe Tribe. Today I was invited by Sarah to help moderate the space, especially because I'm a lifestyle brand and not politically aligned to any party. I'll be mainly helping to produce this show behind the scenes by monitoring the chat. So please keep things respectful, and you are always welcome to ask questions in the chat. It's located at...
Keep it respectful, folks. Don't bring up her vast amount of fraud and lies and perjury. That, by the way, I've already listened to a few snippets of this Spaces interview, and no, people did not keep it respectful, which is awesome.
At the bottom right-hand corner of your phone. And plus, I'll also be supporting the space in the DMs behind the scenes. So looking forward to a great conversation. Back over to our host, Sarah.
Thank you, Indra. And as always, we're going to establish some rules. We want people to speak, that come up to speak, to not dominate the conversation. Have a couple of minutes, say your words in a couple of minutes. Speak whatever you want to speak. Please keep it respectful. If you're not respectful, we'll drop you back down to listener. Nothing personal. We also, Indra will be bringing up speakers. We do have people that Tara has wanted to invite, and we'll have a lively conversation. But as always, keep it respectful.
Now they're going to be skinned alive. This is awesome, lively conversation. Oh, it gets very lively. Believe me, I've listened to the clips on the on the Twitters. It got really lively.
Respectful. If you have questions and you do not come up to speak, as Indra said, please post it into the chat. Tara, I wanted to start off with you giving yourself a brief introduction. For people who may be living under a rock and who don't know who you are.
Well, I don't think they're living under a rock. It's just that she really disappeared from the news because people realized she was no longer credible. I mean, obviously, those of us who are very online, who deal specifically with the dirtbag left, know who she is. But other people, they're not living under a rock. They just stopped paying attention to her when it realized she was not telling the truth. She was part of a Russian op to help get Joe Biden out of the primary and install Bernie Sanders, who then would have lost to Trump. Because the way Biden was able to win was by getting centrist Republicans to vote for him. That was what made the difference in those crucial swing states. And he did that, but Bernie would not have been able to do that. Bernie was just not... he was too closely aligned with a far left brand of politics and of revolution that really alienated far too many centrist voters. And of course, the Kremlin knew that, which is why they tried to get him to be the Democratic nomination by using Tara Reid as a false accuser to accuse Joe Biden of rape. Again, the media, once they realized this was an op and that she was a fraud, just stopped covering her back in 2020. And the reason why people may not know who she is at this moment is because she hasn't been covered due to the fact that hoaxes don't get covered by the media.
Go ahead.
Okay. I wanted to also, if you could bring up, my attorney is here, Rada. I think she's listed as a listener. She's there.
We all love Rada. She's such a potato. Oh my God, she's such a silly person. Yes, please bring up Rada.
Rada's here.
Yes, and then Joe. Down. Anyway, there's a couple people I think that are listeners that we're trying to be speakers. But okay, so I'm Tara Reid, and not the actress from The Big Lebowski, but the other Tara Reid.
Yeah, the one who's a fraud and a failure, not the one who is now stuck in Russia, who is now, man, you are in a pickle, my dear. No. You're not the actress who most millennials remember fondly from the American Pie movies. Go on.
And I am a former Senate staffer for Joe Biden. And in 1993, I had made
Ooh, which story? Which story is she about to choose? Is it going to be the neck touching? Is it going to be the other story? Yeah. Ugh, it is hard to remember all the details of your lie. Okay, let's see you try and fumble your way through this.
Bad experience working in his office, and
so now it's just a bad experience. You know what? I bet even she has, flubbed up the details a bit, so she's just going to say bad experience. All right.
He sexually harassed and assaulted me, and I did not go to the press in 19...
You did not go to the press, did you, or did you not put in a complaint? The complaint that's in the Senate archives that you could reach at any point, but you keep pretending you can't reach? Or is it the fact you did not go to the press because you had been fired for throwing out constituents' mail? Believe me, excuse me, we all know why you actually left Joe Biden's office in 1993. It had nothing to do with anything he did to you.
1993 at all, any media. I simply went through protocol. I went through the protocol you go through like at a workplace, and then to the Senate, U.S. Senate, and I filed a sexual harassment report with the intent to tell the whole story, but it was never followed up on by the Senate.
Well, you never filed the complaint. That's why you keep pretending you can't reach it. All you have to do is go to the Senate and say, hey, give me permission to get my file, my employment file, and the Senate archives will give that to you. Megyn Kelly called you out in that interview. She said, all you have to do is go to that Senate, to those Senate archives and say, may I have my employee file, please? That's all you have to do, and you keep not doing it. In fact, the last time that, Marjorie Taylor Greene and Matt Gaetz tried to do it, the Senate archive said Tara Reid has to do it herself to get her employee record out, and you ran off to Russia. You keep pretending you don't have access to that complaint. You keep pretending it's actually in the University of Delaware files. But it's not. It's in the Senate archives, if it does exist, which it doesn't. And you know it doesn't. That's why you've never actually accessed it, because then your bluff will be called, there will be no complaint, and you'll be revealed as a fraud even more than you've been revealed now. I mean, and yet you keep pretending you don't have access to it. This has already been gone over again and again. Megyn Kelly, for God's sake. Megyn Kelly, Republican, hard right, someone who interviews Trump repeatedly, said, hey, Tara, something's not adding up here. I think she literally said that. Something's not adding up here. You could have accessed those Senate archives any time in the last 3 years, and the last time you tried to do that, you suddenly ran off to Russia. Let's be real here.
That piece of paper was filed somewhere with the U.S. Senate, and then went back to apparently Joe Biden's office, according to the U.S. Senate. and then went into the University of Delaware and it is sealed.
According to the Senate? No, there's nobody has said that. It would be in the Senate archives if it exists. It would not be among Joe Biden's office papers. There is literally no evidence at all that it would be among Joe Biden's office papers. Why would that even be an issue? Has there ever been any employee complaints found among any senator's old papers that have been bequeathed to universities? Senator Strom Thurmond bequeathed all his senatorial papers to, the University of Alabama. I mean, he had a lot of employee complaints because he was a very handy old man. Unfortunately, he did sexually assault a lot of female staffers on the Hill, allegedly, including one who was only 15. She wasn't a staffer. She was the daughter of one of the staffers, allegedly. He had a lot of problems. And yet, I'm sure there are many complaints filed on him. And yet, if you unseal his documents at the University of Alabama, there are none of those complaints there. And you can understand why. Because if an employee has some complaints or papers that go into a university and those files are later unsealed after the senator's death, that's a huge violation of privacy on the part of the employee. Nobody wants anyone's old employee records unsealed and laid bare to the public, along with like a senator's old speeches and documents and memoranda. That is a huge privacy violation. If there is a complaint, and remember, we know there isn't, because if there were a complaint, she would have gone to the Senate and asked for it, and the Senate archives would have given it to her. There has been 3 years, again and again and again, she's been given the opportunity to say, let's get it from the Senate archives, and again and again and again, she makes up an excuse saying, no, Megyn Kelly already exposed this in her interview. Again, far right, Biden hater, Megyn Kelly already exposed this.
And I have tried to get it through FOIA, but FOIA is not accepted by University of Delaware. So I was
University of Delaware is a private institution, so yes.
Rejected. So other attorneys tried and could not, and reporters. And then I think it was Judicial Watch, which I believe is a a group of lawyers that file suits. But anyway, they had filed.
You know, she's talking a lot more about all this sort of legal minutia about the damn complaint than she is about what actually happened in the Senate. She doesn't want to talk about that because she probably forgot a few details of the story, and she's been called out about that before. Zenkus Watch has called her out on how she altered her story for the 60 Minutes Australia interview from what it originally was. She doesn't want to talk about the story because she doesn't remember the details because it never occurred. This R word that rhymes with tape never occurred. Instead, she wants to go over this sort of weird, utterly uninteresting paperwork wrangling about FOIAs and Judicial Watch and University of Delaware and Senate archives and, God, nobody cares.
For more than that, they wanted more of the files, and last week the state Supreme Court of Delaware said, nope, they are not going to release those files that are sealed by Joe Biden. It's not in the public interest.
Yeah, damn right. Sucks to suck, Tara.
So they won't release it. And I had gone to help for Time's Up. Time's Up has now been dismantled. They got basically exposed for corruption and for being a catch and kill, basically, for elite Democrats.
No, what happened is that, first of all, what happened with Time's Up, there were valid complaints against them by people who had valid allegations against politicians. I believe Andrew Cuomo, the Andrew Cuomo situation. I'm not going to get into that, but that actually, only except that most of his accusers appear to be quite credible. But what happened with the Time's Up situation that Tara Reid keeps on trying to insert herself into was that they refused to represent her because she did not want to either sue Joe Biden either on a criminal ground or in a civil suit. What she wanted was for Time's Up to work for her for free as essentially a public relations firm. They offered their services to her. She refused to sue Biden. She said the statute of limitations was, expired on either a civil suit or a criminal suit. She just wanted somebody to yell and bully and, deplatform her critics. That's what she wanted. And Time's Up said that's not what we're being funded for. We're being funded to protect women. We're not being funded as a free public relations firm. That's why they didn't help her in the way that she wanted to be helped. And frankly, that's why most of her lawyers keep leaving her, because she sort of expects them to work for her for free, to do stupid, to either, file frivolous lawsuits like the slap suit she filed against the New York Times that rebounded back onto her, and that she's now on the hook for 71 grand to the New York Times. Lawyers don't accept her because she doesn't pay them, and it's now looking really bad to have your client be Tara Reid, especially when she's committed perjury many times and is just generally not a good person. I think the only person she has represented her now is this Rada woman, who's just a complete potato and is like just one of the stupidest people I've ever seen on Twitter. Like, I mean, granted, there are a lot of stupid people on Twitter, but oh man, nobody's gonna work for you, girl. Nobody's gonna be your legal representation. You're just poison as a client.
They went after the Cuomo survivors. They went after the Weinstein survivors. Unfortunately, some of the founders of Time's Up, Hillary Rosen, and Anita Dunn. And when I went to Time's Up, it was before I went to the media. I had gone forward about the sexual harassment, but hadn't, was in the process of talking to the New York Times reporter, and it hadn't been all the way out about the sexual assault yet.
Well, yeah, that's because you were thinking that Bernie still had a chance to beat Joe Biden in the primaries. But it was after Super Tuesday, when Joe Biden absolutely stomped Bernie Sanders, that you decided to ratchet up your accusations from like, oh, he violated my personal space by resting his hand on my shoulders, he played with my curly hair, but nothing worse than that. You had to change the story like, oh, and by the way, he raped me too. Did I forget to say that? I'm sorry, but he did do that as well. You had to change that story because you were looking for something horrible enough to pressure the Democratic Party to make Joe Biden drop out, despite winning all the primaries, and install Bernie Sanders, despite Bernie not winning enough primaries to merit that nomination, and then having Bernie lose to Trump, which was the end goal all along by the Kremlin.
And I, in January, had gone to of that year, Time's Up for help, and did not know that Anita Dunn was already working for Joe Biden's campaign, was already on the payroll, her public relations firm that was tied to Time's Up. And according to FEC, they spent over $2.2 million trying to silence my story. So I didn't get it.
No, they didn't. They didn't spend $2.2 million. No. What happened was that you wanted a public relations firm that would work for you for free and yell at people. They offered their services and several consultants to you to say, do you want to sue Biden? Do you want to sue, or do you want to charge him on criminal grounds? And you were like, the statute of limitations has expired. I can't think of anything else to do. I want to at least try it and see if that can be bent. You didn't say that. You didn't want any real investigation into your claims. You just wanted your claims to be broadcast as loudly as possible, and to silence your critics. You wanted the lawyers to go and threaten to sue every single person who criticized you so that that person would be silenced. You wanted a bully to work for you on your behalf, and that's not what Time's Up does. That's not what Time's Up did. They were like, we can't help you unless you want to sue someone or want representation because you're bringing criminal charges against someone. We're here to help, but that's not what we're doing. That's why you're angry at Time's Up.
Any real help. I had gone to Time's Up for attorney help and for, trying to navigate the media because I had no experience doing that. Of course, did not receive. My case was accepted, but then the PR part was rejected because there was Anita Dunn was already working for him, and I was.
No, the PR part was rejected because you were not willing to work with Time's Up in the capacity with which they work, which is you were not willing to bring a lawsuit against anyone. You just wanted people to you just wanted Time's Up to bully other people on social media when those people spoke out against you.
Told, it's too political, and they did not tell me it was a conflict of interest. Well, later down the road, they did the same thing to the Cuomo survivors. They did to some other survivors that are not as high-profile cases, and they basically had to dismantle their nonprofit, or they were going to be sued extensively. And so they had to resign in disgrace. And so that happened. And then,
You're rotting away in Russia with several indictments hanging over your head in the United States. Sucks to be you. I think I'd rather be among Time's Up right now than where you are.
The rest is history. You saw a lot of media. Western media was very, the corporate media was very kind of, it was weaponized by the Biden machine.
Western media weaponized by the Biden machine. All the Kremlin talking points all here. Honey, you got debunked. You got debunked. You left too many breadcrumbs. You were debunked badly. That's what happened.
And you had trolls online doing,
Oh, I think she's talking about us now. Trolls, Zankus watchers. I think she's talking about us.
Campaigns, and yeah, made my life pretty miserable, or tried to. And I just decided to fight back and to keep pushing through.
Aw, consequences for your actions. I'm so sorry, dear. You could have just logged off and lived your life, but no, you wanted that, you wanted that E. Jean Carroll money. The woman who actually has a credible rape accusation against Trump. You wanted that that GoFundMe money. And also, this is all alleged, I think you may have been sort of forced to stay online because the Kremlin needed you to keep on talking. The Kremlin needed you to keep on talking every time Trump had another rape or sexual harassment, or Matt Gaetz had a rape or sexual harassment charge against him, or allegation, I should say. They needed your name to trend on Twitter. They needed you to platform all sorts of Kremlin talking points. So I think you were just basically doing your job when you said you're going to continue to speak out, blah, 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 and not log off. This is all alleged, but it seems pretty obvious that you're a Kremlin mouthpiece at this point, albeit not a very intelligent one.
Because, I lost everything coming forward, and it wasn't pleasant, but
No, I mean, she actually got a really nice place on the West Coast, and a horse and everything. She got a substantial amount of money writing for RT, which isn't of itself very suspicious. Because I've written a few columns for some publications. They don't pay you much. They pay you like maybe $200, $100 per column. The fact that RT was paying her enough for her absolutely terrible writing, for her to buy a house on the West Coast of the United States, where real estate prices are huge, or even just renting a very nice house by the seashore, that was suspicious. It sounds like she got a very good Kremlin payoff in response to her allegation. She's lost everything now because she did something very stupid. She's decided to flee to Russia and defect there. And so she's now, I think, in a really crummy hotel room in a country that is being slammed by economic sanctions, that is very unstable politically, and she can't go back to the U.S. without going to jail. So she's stupid, and she's fucked now. But, she did receive a lot of money from Russian sources, allegedly, after she came forward with that allegation, and I believe that payoff was laundered through her RT column. Again, as someone who writes columns, it doesn't pay enough to even cover rent in a low rent area, let alone a large, nice house on the West Coast of the United States and boarding for your horse.
I didn't want it to happen to somebody else. And, sexual assault is very traumatizing. I told several people throughout my life about what had happened. I had thought I was
I wonder, though, if she told anyone about how her ex-husband allegedly raped her, too. Because she put that in her memoir in October, that she was also raped by her ex-husband. And I believe she did that in retaliation to her ex-husband refusing to corroborate her about what she said about Biden. When the media she said, "He'll corroborate me," the media reached out to her ex-husband, and he wrote back a very short, polite note saying, essentially, "I'm not going to get involved." And I think she was furious by that, and she wrote in her autobiography, When the Truth Doesn't Fit In, she wrote how, "Oh, by the way, my ex-husband raped me too." I think she uses rape accusations as weapons to get back at men who refuse to bow down to her wishes. I really think that's how she does things. And yet she hasn't ever referenced that. And I think it's because she knows how bad that looks, that she's somebody who enjoys, throwing rape accusations out here, there, and everywhere. So I'm wondering if in the Spaces interview she's going to mention her second rape accusation against her ex-husband. Let's listen.
Only one until later, when, many of the other women came forward talking about how uncomfortable they were. And I realized, oh, okay, this is something that continued that he did. And it was a very, very difficult decision to come forward. There have been times when I regret it because of the chaos that's led to my life. And then having to relive it because I didn't talk about it.
Yeah, being held accountable for your lies is pretty bad. It's pretty bad. But, maybe, you could just stop lying. That's also another possibility. I mean, there are times when you keep whining about how Stormy Daniels got her own perfume and E. Jean Carroll got her millions, and the lady who accused Justice Kavanaugh got like over $600,000 in GoFundMe's and blah 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 blah. And like, I don't doubt that credible accusers do have their lives turned to hell when they come forward and accuse powerful people. But the fact is that Tara Reid, has this sort of attitude of jealousy towards other accusers when they, saying they got so much money, how come I didn't get any money? And now here she's saying like all accusers get a backlash, which is true enough. But then how come you keep on saying all these other accusers were treated so well? Everybody loved Stormy Daniels. Everybody loved E. Jean Carroll. Everybody loved Kavanaugh's accuser. How come nobody's talking to me? And I mean, it's because you're a liar. The other women were telling the truth. You're a liar. Plus, I don't think. Just to make something clear, Stormy Daniels does not accuse Trump of sexual assault in any way. She just had an affair with him. But she still got attacked and even arrested by pro-Trump cops because she humiliated the president while describing their affair.
About it too much, and then all of a sudden I had to like relive it when I was, did the Megyn Kelly interview and other big interviews. And, what he did to me was the legal definition of rape. And
that's very interesting, the way she said what he did to me was the legal definition of rape. You know what? Because I think she had to hash out what exactly she had to accuse Joe Biden of between her, allegedly, and several Kremlin sources. Her original story saying like, oh, when I worked for him, he would like pat my shoulder and play with my hair, were very close to what the other 7 women were saying about how Joe Biden had sort of like didn't really respect their personal space, which is obviously quite credible because Biden has been shown on video doing this sort of thing, and Biden went forward and said, I'm really sorry, I like to hug, but clearly this is not something that is really allowable anymore, which is fair enough. I think the whole thing with her story, I do think she had to work it out with other people, including allegedly Zenkis, who would know, like, what is legally rape? What could legally be called rape? Like, she said, well, he, had sex with me at a party against my will. It's like, can we pinpoint a time when you and he were at a party? Because people are going to say, what party? And they're going to go back to his schedule and see when you and he were at a party. And nobody's going to be able to corroborate that. Well, maybe it was in the office. Were you ever up in his office? Were people in your position ever up in the senator's office? Weren't you just a staff aide? It's like, well, and, just having to go, it's like, was there any time that you could have actually met him, been in physical proximity to him? And she finally said, well, sometimes we had to give him his gym bag in the mornings. So they finally said, all right, let's imagine a scenario where you hand him his gym bag and he does something to you that could be legally called rape. They had to pump up the accusation so that she could use that word, R-A-P-E. They had to pump it up and they had to think of a scenario. And I think they did come up with a scenario, which is what she later accused Biden of. But it really sounded like it was worked out in a very painful fashion. Like even the whole point of her pantyhose, where it's like, well, mechanically, how can this work? I mean, Juanita Broaddrick, who accused Clinton, credibly, of rape, she was wearing pantyhose when he raped her. And at no point when she talked about the story did she say, like, okay, this is exactly how he was able to mechanically do this, even though I was wearing pantyhose. In an actual rape situation, pantyhose won't stop anybody at all. The fact she had to say, oh, by the way, I suppose if you're probably wondering about my pantyhose, it was just hot out and sometimes I didn't wear pantyhose. And it was like, that was one of the first red flags where it was like, well, one of the second red flags. The first red flag was that she was changing the story in the first place from what she said in 2019. The second red flag was that, wait, why does that matter? It sounded like she really had to think through the scenario hard so that she could sell it to the media. And it just smells like this was a scenario that was dreamt up and crafted between her and several other people, both and seen as airtight before she brought it to the media, to Katie Halpert's interview in 2020.
And then, I lost my career. And
well, I mean, first of all, you were found out to be a perjurer. You lied about your degree. You lied under oath about your degree. You worked for the census office, and people at the census office reported that you were lying about not going to meetings, so you were fired for that. You never were able to pass the bar. This is on you again, and I've discussed this in earlier reactions, like with her interview with Megyn Kelly. She just doesn't hold herself accountable. She never holds herself accountable. She is always a victim. You never had a career. Why didn't you study hard enough to pass the bar? Why did you lie to your boss at the census office? Why did you throw out constituents' mail when you worked for Biden so you got fired? And you told everyone else that it was because you were bullied by staffers. And then later, in 2019, you said you were fired because you were sexually harassed. You've always failed at careers, and it's because you don't work hard enough. You don't work hard enough. And you always blame other people. You always have to be the victim, and other people have to be the mean people. That's how you've lived your entire life, Tara Reid. And now you are stuck in Russia, in a country slammed by economic ruin. You may not ever see your daughter again, and she's about to get married, I think. And you possibly have an untreated aortic aneurysm, too. God, that sucks to be you. And you're almost 60, and you have absolutely nothing to show for it, except revealing yourself to be a fraud.
Because I tried to report it. And so that's basically the long and short of it. Since then, I've been asked to testify before Congress, and I was going to do so.
I think Matt Gaetz and Marjorie Taylor Greene blew you off once you did that little stunt where you defected to Russia. I mean, when you're so radioactive, not even Matt Gaetz no longer wants to touch you. You're pretty radioactive. I mean, I think right now they're busy showing Hunter Biden's dick to the entire C-SPAN audience and talking about Ukraine and IRS and all that stuff. They don't, whatever case they're building against Biden, they don't want to taint it by having a known fraud like yourself also testify.
Gates and Marjorie Taylor Greene had asked me. I had actually gone to Democrats asking if I could testify. AOC never responded. None of the Democrats ever did.
Cry harder.
I'd gone to them for help several times over the years before I went public. And then when I was, as the election's been amping back up again, and you see the trolls kind of amping back up again, I got more death threats again all of a sudden. And
post them. You post everything else. Post these death threats. No, I need you to post these death threats. You don't say death threats unless you actually can post them. And this is going to come up later during the Spaces conversation. You keep saying death threats. I'm sure you get a lot of bad messages. I'm sure, God knows I do. Plus a lot of, messages from bots trying to, sell me OnlyFans content. I mean, I think everybody gets those messages. But post these death threats. All I see are just mildly angry threats. Or people saying, yeah, you're a liar and a fraud. And you just defected to Russia, which is, frankly, true. But don't say death threats unless you're allowed to just post them up. Post them up. Show us.
Harassment, and then when I was, I had an opportunity to go to Moscow, Russia, and do an interview and do a translation of my book into Russian, and then possibly other languages. So I went for 1 week, and ended up being told while I was there by former intelligence Americans that I would probably be arrested when I came back for sanctions violations or for maybe the sealed case. And,
the sealed case. Man, I would love to know what's in that case. I suspect it's mostly involving her accepting money from a hostile foreign power to try and influence a U.S. election. That's what that sealed case is about. I don't know if we'll ever know. If she rots away and dies in Russia, that's fine with me.
I had to make a decision right then and there, and so we'll go from there. I'll talk about that in a minute.
Well, that's quite a drastic move. What's your life like there? And before you answer, I want to get to Nick Sorter as well. He has, I believe, some questions on life in Russia. Go ahead, Nick.
I don't know who this guy is. Let's see what he has to say.
Yeah, so Tara, good talking to you again. We've had you on our show several times.
Oh, so he must be another dirtbag leftist. All right, well, he's probably going to say something stupid, but let's listen.
Face it, I co-host with Mario. This is the first time I've had the opportunity to speak with you since you moved to Moscow, and you kind of give a little bit of details as to why you actually decided to make that move. But you've been in Moscow for several weeks now. I've seen your tweets about it, and it's clearly it's a pretty beautiful place. One of the interesting things, you've seen the sanctions that the West, especially the U.S., EU countries and such, have put on Russia to try to destroy the economy. But your pictures seem to show that the supermarkets are full. The economy seems fairly strong. Are these sanctions actually having an effect?
Oh, he's trying to boost the Kremlin narrative that the U.S. sanctions are having no effect on the Russian economy. That's not true, by the way. The Russian economy is in dire straits. It was recently revealed that the poorest U.S. state, Mississippi, the average income that someone in Mississippi earns in a year, which is about $30,000, is still 4 times more than what the average Russian citizen is currently earning in today's economy. So let that sink in. The average Russian citizen is making the equivalent of less than $8,000 a year USD. And people like Reed, and I guess this guy Nick, are trying to boost the narrative that Russia is still healthy and thriving economically despite all the massive sanctions.
On the Russian economy, and are the Russian people suffering? What are your thoughts on that?
I'm new to Moscow, as you pointed out, but I have to say it's probably, and I've traveled extensively over Europe and different parts of the world. And of course, I've been to most major cities in the United States. I was surprised, because I expected it to be like any other major city. Like, there's things you like and things you don't like. I'm not a city person. I tend to like the country more. But I fell in love with Moscow. It's really beautiful. There's a lot of greenery. There's a lot of parks, a lot of focus on children. So a lot of if you have a family, I think it would be a really nice place. Very clean. They shampoo the streets. The public transport shocked me. It's so efficient, and there's so much of it, and it's so cheap. And the subway, like when you go down to it, it's like a museum. It's.
She's actually correct about this. I have been to Moscow, and the subways are very much like museums. They're beautiful. There's beautiful architecture. There's beautiful paintings and frescoes. And the reason for this is that the Russians said they wanted to have their art preserved in the case of a nuclear war. And the subways were deep enough underground to be protected by nuclear blasts so that after civilization collapsed on the surface, people could still go underground and see the best of civilization underground, which I thought was kind of neat. But she is actually correct about this, because speaking as someone who's been to Russia, I was also stunned by how beautiful both Moscow and St. Petersburg were. They're very beautiful cities.
There's these paintings and sculptures, and it's just very fast, very efficient. Now, I'm still navigating that because everything's in Russian and I don't speak Russian. But it has kind of like the tube kind of vibe, or DC, the DC Metro, where you have colored like the blue line, the red line, so it's, if you kind of know where you're going, if you're on the wrong line, like if you're supposed to be on the blue line and you should be on the red line or something like that. But
I wonder if she can read Cyrillic. It's a very easy alphabet. You could probably learn Cyrillic in about 20 minutes. If you know Cyrillic and you know where you want to go, you can navigate the Russian subway. The fact that she can't even really read Cyrillic anymore or at all, it's a little odd. If you read Cyrillic and you know the name of the place you're going to, it's on the map. You can pretty much take the train there. That's just a quibble.
I noticed that people what I did notice was some boarded up, near the Kremlin, there's like some, major department stores that aren't there anymore. So they're boarded up, but they have.
Oh, you're not allowed to say that. Russia's thriving. The economy's thriving. You're not allowed to say that. Tara, you might get in trouble. You might get a reduction in your salary. You're not allowed to say that.
Placements. And then a lot of people on the streets, because it's warm right now, it's summer. So tons of tourists from other countries. And like a lot of families out and about and working people. People seem well dressed, very well dressed. But, in a major city, like if you go to Milan or if you go to New York, you see people that are very well dressed, right? But I noticed even the average people, like there's not really any bad neighborhoods per se.
Believe me, there are. They're just not letting you see them. But there are multiple bad areas in Moscow that just aren't very safe. Every major city has them. I think Moscow definitely has them.
I was walking around this one park, and I remember I had to go down this, it was like a ramp, like a tunnel underneath a bridge, and I immediately got anxiety because, like, in LA or in San Francisco, if you go down to something like that, or Seattle, you're going to run into homeless, you're going to run into whatever. But there are...
Ooh, are you allowed to say that about people who are unhoused? That sounds very classist of you, Tara. Tisk tisk. I think Zenkus would say a few things about how you don't want to be near poor people.
Are no homeless here. There is crime, I'm sure. I haven't experienced anything close to it. But there's no homeless. And so I did an inquiry.
They're put in jail. If you see a homeless person, believe me, that person is rounded up and put in jail in Russia. They don't allow people to live on the streets because those people are put in jail or other horrible things happen to them. You don't want to know what happens to somebody who is unfortunate enough to be houseless and on the street in Russia.
About that, because I was curious, like why, I don't see people like kind of zoned out or zombied out like you do in LA or San Francisco. And what I found out is that 80 to 90% of the residents, particularly in Moscow, own their own apartments and even a dasha, which is a vacation home, outright. So not even the bank owns it, they own it. So home ownership is pretty easy. And they're nice, like nice places. And, there's, not so nice places or just kind of medium places. But
yeah, that sounds like complete crap. I'm going to have to double check that statistic, but that does not sound right. Believe me, there's a homelessness problem. Or a reason, perhaps in a more sinister fashion, there seems to be a lack of people without housing in Russia. Every major city has it. Every wealthy city has it. It's certainly there in China. In Russia, if they're not there, it means they're either in jail or worse.
I mean, I've had the opportunity to travel down to the Caucasus, down to Sochi, up to St. Petersburg, and see some smaller towns. And it's really beautiful.
Can I ask, are you living on your own? Are you hosted by somebody? And do you ever plan on coming back to the United States? And then I know I'm bombarding you with questions, but what do you say to people as well that think that you are a traitor to your country by moving to Russia?
Just to add on.
Yeah, haha. Down to brass tacks, I see.
So that, there have been questions about whether or not, did you have to renounce your U.S. citizenship, or are you still a U.S. citizen as well?
I am still a U.S. citizen, and I have temporary asylum, so I don't have citizenship in Russia yet. I just, it's very bureaucratic, just like the U.S. is about citizenship and things like that. So it's not, even the fast track is that's not as fast, right? So right now I have temporary asylum. They're deciding, and so then you go from there. You are not required to renounce your U.S. citizenship. There are people that I've met them that have either European, EU citizenship and Russian, or American and Russian. There are many people that travel back and forth to answer that question. And then, I'm sorry, someone else asked me a couple other questions. Can you repeat what you asked me?
Sure. We've gotten some questions about people that call you a traitor to the United States. What do you say to those people?
I say this. I was raped by the President of the United States when I was a staffer and he was the senator. And I tried to get help.
Well, no, you weren't. No, you weren't. No. You accepted foreign money. You accepted foreign money to put a false rape accusation against Joe Biden. It all fell apart, and now the Justice Department has found the fact that you have taken money from a hostile foreign power to illegally influence a U.S. election. You're in deep shit, and you're hiding in Russia. That's what's happening. That is what is happening.
For decades. And I came forward in good faith and it was also going to testify in Congress and got hounded and got terrorized and lost everything, lost my ability to get work, lost my housing, people telling me
You got a very nice house on the West Coast from a payoff from the Kremlin that was laundered through your really shitty RT column, allegedly.
Couldn't rent me or they couldn't have me around because of Joe Biden. And some people had political feelings, but some people were literally scared. They were scared. They didn't want to become targets themselves. People didn't want to associate with me because they felt I was...
Because you're a liar and a scam artist. That's why I didn't want to associate with you. Oh my God, that's hilarious.
A target. That's the kind of country we live in. I'm not the traitor. I did...
Oh yeah, compared to what? The glorious freedom of Russia? Oh, please.
How much public service, how much, throughout my life. And then when I ask for help, when I talk about what happened, because it's an elite Democrat, because it's Joe Biden, I'm treated like I'm the criminal, I'm the traitor. I went to Russia with the intention of simply...
All right, here we go. There's over 1 million homeless people in Moscow, and it's been increasing since the coronavirus epidemic, and there are far too few shelters to accommodate them. My dear, what you've been experiencing is what's called a Potemkin village effect. They are showing you only what they want to show you in Russia. So it's been, here we go. Homelessness in Russia has been observed since the end of the 19th century, and right now, there's an estimated 300,000 people in Moscow alone who are homeless. And it's a really big deal. And in fact, that's actually gone up since the COVID epidemic. That's from 2002. Let's go on here. Today, so let's see. Right. So there's over 1 million people who are homeless in homelessness in Russia. Here we go. And there's just far too few shelters for them. Here we go. Moscow's coronavirus lockdown leaves the homeless out in the cold. That's from COVID. That's from 3 years ago. Okay. Now there are shelters, and there's something called overnight stays, where people without houses in Russia can stay. But the idea that everybody owns their own place and they even have a summer place, that's just pure propaganda.
Having my book translated, I didn't plan on staying. It was when it was made clear to me that I was in danger. And that was made clear by a sitting U.S. congressman. When I talked to Matt Gaetz on the phone from Moscow, Russia, and I've talked about that. And
I honestly wonder if Gaetz told her that because he did not want her testifying, or that McCarthy told him to not have her testify because she was just too radioactive because she had already been debunked. I think that may have been more of the reason why Gaetz told her not to come and testify.
That was the pin in it. When that was the final conversation, I looked at several data points. I looked at several things happening and didn't make a decision. And then that final conversation, he didn't give me advice, but he just said, they couldn't protect me. And he felt like my life was in danger if I came back to the United States. And that's a very powerful thing for a U.S. citizen to hear.
Was that somebody from intelligence? How would they know?
That was two different former intelligence, and that was Matt Gaetz, Congressman Matt Gaetz. Matt Gaetz had a conversation with me on the phone. We talked for about 7 minutes. And
Matt Gaetz warned you about coming back to the United States?
I was coming to I was coming to testify before Congress as a whistleblower. And he said, his exact words were, Tara, because I was talking to him about the legal things. I was like, what is this sealed case against me? Why can't anyone get any information? Am I going to be arrested?
Yeah, I want to know that too. I'm interested about that sealed case too.
Are there really red notices? What's going on? And he said, look, I can't speak to that. I don't know. I don't have that information. But I can tell you, he said, Tara, I know these people. I know how they operate. And I'm frankly worried about your physical safety if you come back to the United States.
Do you ever plan on returning, or is Russia your new home?
No, I had every intention of coming back and going back and forth. Like my dream, we had family events planned because I have a big family thing that's going to be happening. And so I was very excited this summer. I was coming home to write. My schedule was going to get a little easier because I had a pretty tough schedule with what I was doing before. And so when I came back from Russia, I just had my writing schedule and, to get my chapters in for the publishing house. And so I thought I was going to have this wonderful summer and then go back in August or September to Russia to then do the second part of the other book and then come back again. So my plans was to go back and forth, and that got thwarted.
Yeah, well, I mean, boo-hoo. I mean, maybe you shouldn't have done all that illegal shit. Jesus.
Yeah, so...
But go ahead, Nick.
Well, no, I mean, if you have another question, Sarah, because I was going to shift just a little bit. If you have another question, go for it.
Yeah, but do you think that you see yourself coming back in months, weeks, years, or are you planning on staying?
You know what? I'm going to ask Rada to speak up on this because
Yeah, I think she may have revealed a little bit too much. I know that Gates has not really confirmed a lot of what she's saying here. The Megyn Kelly show reached out to Gates. Gates sort of gave a sort of non-answer, or rather his office did. And not a lot of people really, just from the way that Gates has been acting when people like Megyn Kelly reach out to him to confirm what Tara Reid is saying, really indicates to me that the GOP just wants to separate themselves from her. They do want to bring down Biden, but they want to bring down Biden on charges that or at least have some sort of credible evidence attached to them. They don't want to try and bring him down using Reid, because that would just make them the laughingstock. That would not only fail, but it would also ruin any chance they have of any type of forward movement in bringing down Biden. So consequently, it's like, well, listen, this thing with Hunter has some legs on it. This thing with, maybe the IRS has some legs on it. We'll try and get that done. But we're not going to talk with Tara Reid because she's already been debunked. And judging from how Gates has been sort of giving a non-answer when asked about confirming everything that Reid has been saying, it indicates to me that Gates doesn't want to be involved either, after first saying he did. But he's now walking that back, apparently in a big way.
And the reason I'm saying that is because poor Rada.
Anyway, so she wants Rada to speak for her because she tends to reveal way too much when she speaks, which is, I mean, Rada's not the brightest bulb in the drawer, but Rada's not the sharpest knife in the drawer, mixing my metaphors there, but I think she has enough legal training, unlike Reid, who, despite her legal law degree, is just doesn't know a damn thing about the law. Like, she thinks liable and libel are the same thing. Liable is the same thing as libel. So yeah, just have Rada speak for you, because I don't think Rada's that bright either, but I think she's at least slightly more competent when it comes to the legal stuff.
I go to her, okay, can I go back to America next week? And I'm sure,
would it change your mind? Would you be more likely to go back to the United States if somebody like Donald Trump were to be reelected as president, and Joe Biden would, go off into the sunset and move into that nursing home that he belongs in?
Sorry, I think what they're basically trying to ask are what are the circumstances under which you would return to the U.S. I think that's what they're trying to ask.
I'd like to know if I was safe. Yeah, if I was safe and not going to be put in a cage, and also, not.
She keeps saying put in a cage instead of arrested. That just seems a little peculiar. It almost seems like bird in a gilded cage, like she still sees herself as this beautiful exotic creature that the mean world just wants to cage her. because their beauty is just too much for us to handle. I just find that expression odd, put in a cage instead of arrested and jailed.
Not be terrorized and harassed and trolled and, you know.
We all get trolled. I mean, come on. I don't want to get trolled. If you're on social media, you're going to get trolled, and you can't control that.
And I don't mean trolled online. That's just like whatever. That's just like stuff that happens.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. You mean trolled online. That's why you keep threatening every person, every tiny account, with a lawsuit every time people express doubts about your story. Of course you mean that. You know, come on. The Zenkus Watch account is full of people who have had to, hear you and be threatened by you with being, quote unquote, being slapped with a lawsuit because you can't even handle online trolling.
Happens. I'm talking about in person, like in life.
And you're going to get criticism in life as well. How long have you been an adult? Damn it, aren't you almost 60? You're going to be 60 next year. Yes, getting criticism is part of being an adult. Oh my God, I can't believe that she wants this, that she thinks she's entitled to this type of special treatment. What about what Joe Biden has experienced? What about what his wife has experienced? What do you think, how about E. Jean Carroll or, this just any adult who voluntarily injects herself into public life or injects himself into public life is going to experience pushback and blowback. You grow a thicker skin, you act like an adult, and you push on. And you've never done that. You prefer to be the victim. You just don't want to be an adult.
I don't want to have people, showing up at my daughter's home or showing up at her work like they just,
Well, yeah, leave her daughter out of this. She has nothing to do with it. Well, you can make the argument that she stood by her mother's side, or because she backs her mother, she has injected herself publicly, blah, blah, blah. But I would not go that far. I mean, when the dust settles, Tara is her mother. We're always going to trust our parents over other people, even if the other people have better evidence that our parents are lying. I don't blame her daughter for that. She's using her daughter as a sort of people are harassing us unjustly. I mean, Tara's a Kremlin useful idiot who is being paid, allegedly, to interfere in a federal election. She's doing this voluntarily. She's gone public voluntarily with an accusation that was debunked and that she keeps adhering to despite not debunking it. So yeah, she's entitled to pushback. She's entitled to people debunking her. She's entitled to criticism when people debunk her. So she's trying to pretend, well, I just don't want people showing up at my daughter's place of work. I mean, yeah, that's bad, but at the same time, that's not really what people are doing. We're pushing back on you.
Family member and had their work and their address posted online, and we're making plans to harm them, and they have nothing.
Oh, really? What plans? What plans to harm them? Please post that. Please post that, because it sounds like you're making a very serious accusation. Were we actually making plans to harm your family members? Please post that. Please post that. Show evidence of that. I have seen no evidence of that.
Nothing to do with politics and nothing to do with any of this. And it's really heart-wrenching. So to answer your question directly, yes, I would come back to the U.S. if it were safe, and I could. But I actually really like Russia, and I would want to be in both places, come back and forth, and I would be perfectly comfortable with that. So, I mean, I kind of want Rada to step in here too, because she could.
Yeah, you're getting nervous, aren't you? That's these are her allies who are asking her these questions too. These are her allies, and she's getting nervous asking questions, very softball questions by her allies, and she's like, I want Rada to come in and talk for me. She hasn't even gotten to her critics yet.
I
mean, yeah. Exactly, Tara. And what I was going to say is, number one, we don't even know whether you've been subjected to an Interpol red notice, and that's something that we've already put in submissions for, so we should hear back. Unfortunately, they're a very slow organisation, and they'll take at least 4 months to reply to it.
Rada, quick question on that, before you go too far on that. Interpol, okay, do they have any sort of jurisdiction in the United States or even Russia? What's their mandate?
Well, Interpol is an international organisation that countries, very many countries, hundreds of countries, are a member of, and it's basically an information sharing agency. So if the United States, for example, put an Interpol red notice against Tara, that information would be shared with all of the member countries. So if she were to travel back to the United States and she went, for example, via Turkey or via the UAE, when she got to that airport, they'd be alerted that the US wants her arrested under the guidance that she would eventually be extradited. So until we hear back from Interpol themselves, we're absolutely not going to move Tara anywhere at all. So, I mean, that's the first thing. But the other thing is, even when Interpol confirms that she's not listed, there's a risk that the US will be aware of that.
Yeah, she's not going anywhere because whether or not Interpol has a red notice, I think she does have a sealed case against her, and she's probably going to be arrested at some point. So, no one cares. Stay in Russia, dear. Stay in Russia with its thousands of economic sanctions, and stay in Russia with your untreated aortic aneurysm, while you do nothing apparently, while everything else happens in the U.S.
And then they'll put on the Interpol notice after, just to entrap her. And a lot of countries do this just for the purpose of harassing people, getting them arrested abroad, and putting them through lengthy and costly extradition proceedings in a foreign country. And they
I doubt that. I doubt that sounds like a conspiracy theory to me.
Usually detained pending the final outcome, even if it's found that that's, Turkey, for example, decides not to extradite Tara, it could take them 12 to 18 months of her being in detention before they even decide that. So it's an extremely risky.
Still, I would laugh if she spent 12 to 18 months in a Turkish jail. Excuse me. All right, I have to admit, I'd laugh at that
situation to be in when you're abroad and a country is persecuting you. You could be arrested at any time, and we would want some sort of guarantee that when Tara gets back, she's not going to be subject to arrest, that we've investigated the potential allegations against her, these closed judgments that we're hearing so much about, and they've been very apprehensive. Well, in fact, they've outright refused to share any information on that, so we still don't know if she's safe, and I think we would need some.
Well, maybe she shouldn't have broken the law. Oh my god, we don't know if she's safe. Well, one way to remain safe is to not break the law, to not accept a truckload of rubles to put a false rape accusation against the president in order to illegally influence a U.S. election. Don't break the law, you remain safe.
Political assistance to provide that safe haven before Tara could feel confident to return to the U.S.
Tara.
Yes.
I'm gonna go to Lev really quickly, and then Joey, I'll go to you. Go ahead, Lev.
Hi, Sarah. Thank you for having me. My question right now, I have several questions for Tara, but I'd like to ask Radha first as a lawyer. To me, hearing Tara say that she was contacted by a sitting Congressman, Matt Gaetz, and told her basically that she's about to get arrested and not to come back to the United States, that would seem kind of illegal, wouldn't it? I mean, if the United States Justice Department is looking to arrest her.
Oh, is that why Gaetz is denying this? She just blew up Gaetz. Oh, this is hilarious. I didn't know this. Okay.
No, Matt Gaetz never said he didn't address the legal allegations. He said my physical safety was in danger. He was talking about my life, but my life is in danger.
Did he give you any kind of information on what he was basing it on?
No, other than he is who he is.
Okay, you just got Matt Gaetz in trouble. No wonder Matt Gaetz is suddenly shirking and saying we're not backing up those allegations. I did not know that. I am not a lawyer. None of these people are lawyers or really competent lawyers. I don't really consider Radha to be much of a lawyer, but I think Lev Parnas is a lawyer, and he's saying that sounds like you're accusing Matt Gaetz of doing something illegal.
He has access to intelligence, but he said, I know how these people operate, and Tara, I'm very concerned about your physical safety. And he went on to tell me he couldn't guarantee my safety if I were there, if I came there.
Okay, well, let me ask you, Tara, do you think you'd feel safer in the United States if Trump was to win the election and become president? Do you support Trump?
I don't support Trump. I've never voted.
Of course, that's another lie. She does support Trump. She wants to make sure he's elected again by attacking the Democrats. I'm not going to get into that because we all know she's lying about that. But what I do think is what Lev said interestingly about how Matt Gaetz may have very much broken the law. If you warned Reed about this, that Reed is saying something because she's extremely stupid, that she's saying something that makes Matt Gaetz look noble. Oh, Matt Gaetz told me to protect myself. And what she's actually doing is accusing Matt Gaetz of doing something illegal, which is alerting someone who has an investigation, who has a warrant out, alerting that person that they have a warrant out, which apparently that's illegal if you are a congressperson who has special access to that information. No wonder Matt Gaetz got very scared when Megyn Kelly reached out to Gaetz and said, "Can you confirm that Reed said you had this phone call?" And Reed keeps repeating this story. And now she's trying to backtrack. I don't think she realized she just, she's accusing Gaetz of doing something illegal. She thought she was, saying that Gaetz was noble. All right, this is very interesting now.
Republican. I worked for Democrats. I was a Democrat all my life, up until the last election. And frankly, I don't know. Like, would Trump continue? Like, look what they did to Julian Assange. I mean, Trump didn't drop the charges on Julian Assange.
I mean,
Julian Assange is also a rapist and broke a lot of laws.
I would jump on their Tara and say also, it doesn't seem to matter necessarily who the president is at the moment. It's about the DOJ. It's about the weaponization of the justice system and the people.
Well, that sort of goes against the whole idea of this is all politically motivated. If not even the Trump DOJ is willing to drop charges, it means that it's nothing to do with politics. This has everything to do with the law, which rightfully in the U.S. should not be influenced by politics. So if even the Trump DOJ is persecuting Reed, and according to Reed in the Megyn Kelly interview, the Trump DOJ opened the case because the case was opened. Her case was opened in 2020 when Trump was president. So under Trump's DOJ, her case was opened, and it's being pursued under the Biden DOJ. So it looks to me like this is less to do with politics or the machine or the Democratic machine or the Biden regime or whatever crackpot phrases, Tara has been using these days or the Kremlin has been feeding her these days. It has less to do with politics and more to do with the fact that she broke the law. And when you break the law, you get consequences. You get investigated, you get indicted, you get charged, and you get a trial. That's how it works. That's how it's working with Assange, and that's how it's working with her. And it's like, it doesn't matter who the president is. Yeah, because it's not a political problem. It's a legal problem.
People who are operating on vested interests behind the scenes. So I think a change in presidency, it's possible that would assist you. Obviously, you wouldn't be anymore making allegations against the current sitting president, and there would be less inclination to protect him at any costs. But at the same time, we have yet to see it, and we still wouldn't be able to guarantee her safety just on the basis of a change in presidency.
Okay. Another question. I mean, you said that Matt Gaetz and Marjorie Greene are wanted to give testimony in front of Congress. What stopped them? Why haven't you done that yet? I mean, they could do it via Zoom, I guess.
I asked. We're waiting for an answer.
Because they're too radioactive. Because they don't want a known perjurer to give testimony. That's because you're so dirty in terms of your background and your frauds that not even the worst of the worst in the GOP, the Marjorie Taylor Greenes and the Matt Gaetzes, want to touch you. Plus the fact that you basically accuse Matt Gaetz of doing something illegal. No wonder they're not moving forward with that testimony. Frankly, Marjorie Taylor Greene would rather show Hunter Biden's dick on C-SPAN than have you testify. That's how low you've sunk, Tara.
Actually, and I'll let Rada speak to what the legal thing is that they did, but they filed a paper with them saying I'm willing to testify under oath, via teleconference.
Yeah, certainly. We've contacted Jim Jordan, who heads up the committee against the weaponization of the DOJ, and we've offered a commitment that Tara would testify in Congress if her safety could be guaranteed, or alternatively, in writing or in a remote location where her safety would be absolute.
All also have another question. I mean, there's a picture of you, I think, at your press conference with Maria Bertina, convicted foreign agent for the Russia and the United States that was deported. What's your relationship with her?
Well, Maria, actually, there's a really good article for people that are interested. It's called "The Spy Who Wasn't." If you look up Maria Butina and the Spy Who Wasn't, that article, it really kind of lays it out how it was more of a political thing. And she wasn't a spy, and she had to plead guilty because like 98% of those cases, the FARA case, they end up, anything to do with espionage or whatever, end up getting convicted. You don't get, particularly since she was a Russian national. But I believe her, and she was on my show several times, like 3 times, talking mostly about prison conditions and Julian Assange. But we got to know each other through that, and then I've read her book, and her book is startling about just the prison conditions and solitary confinement and the use of torture that was done to her. It was
Well, as Megyn Kelly said, look up what they're doing to people in Russia, and you'll find out why there aren't so many homeless people on the street in Moscow. Believe me, you don't want to know what they do to Putin's political opponents in jail.
pretty gross, and she's had permanent damage done by what happened to her, physical damage.
And we have to remember what she was actually convicted of. She wasn't convicted of espionage or anything like that. She was convicted of essentially lobbying without a license. And this happens all the time. She's not the only one. This is just...
No, she was a spy. And again, she's of course playing up the quote-unquote horrors of the American penitentiary system. What Ta-Nehisi Coates called the gray wastes. And yeah, those penitentiaries are horrifying. That being said, when Kremlin apologists like Tara Reid and Rada and a lot of other people on this Spaces try to play up the way Butina was treated, what they're doing is ignoring what happens in Russia in the penitentiaries. It's far, far worse by so many degrees. Alrighty. So right now, what I'm going to do, we're about 30 minutes into a 3-hour Spaces recording. I have other stuff to do today, so I'm just going to quickly chop off this episode. We're going to continue reacting in episode 5. Right now, I have stuff to do. I think you have stuff to do. We're already past 1 hour because I have been chitter-chattering. I will see you guys in a bit because I really do want to get through this Spaces recording. Alrighty. Toodaloo.